What's up, peeps? Michael Destroys here, and today I want to talk to you about why cultural appropriation must stop. Wait for it. Being a thing. It needs to stop being a thing because it's nonsense. And here I'm going to try to tell you why I think it's nonsense. If you disagree, go ahead and put it in the comments. If you agree, like, subscribe, do the thing. Here I go. And believe me, I understand that there is a certain instant triggering, if you will, when a white male tries to talk about cultural appropriation. So I'm just going to facetiously rationalize it away by saying that I'm a Nazi. All right, so now we got that out of the way. A little formality, a little housekeeping. But check it. All cultures are appropriated, whatever, to some degree by all their cultures. You can read as much history as you want and look at all different types of civilizations, tribes, cultures who have begged, borrowed, stolen, assimilated, absorbed, taken, whatever, from all different other cultures. Unless you live in some sort of isolated tribe in the Amazon, apart from anybody, in which case you're not listening to this. But unless that's you, then your culture, or whatever culture that you belong to, is in some way, in some form, begged, borrowed, stolen from somebody else. Are you a non-Western person wearing a business suit? Uh-oh. Are you a person living in one culture wearing a hairstyle from another culture? Uh-oh. Are you speaking a language that is not originally from your cultural area? Uh-oh. Does your daily dressing routine include some articles of clothing that are not native to your locale or your culture originally? Uh-oh. Do you live and work in a style of building that is not native to your culture or locale? Uh-oh. You see, all these different types of arguments, it just becomes a difference of degree. Like one culture has stolen a little bit more from other cultures, or one culture has been stolen from more than others, or whatnot. And there are cultures, for example, the ancient Carthaginians that, we don't really even know, I guess, what different parts of their culture really were, because when the Romans conquered them, they exterminated them completely. And what we know of the Carthaginians, we only know from Roman history. So the first point is that, yeah, cultural appropriation exists. Okay, so if that's the case, then the argument is not between cultural appropriation and non-cultural appropriation. The argument is just varying degrees of cultural appropriation. Some cultures have stolen a little bit more than others. Some have stolen a lot more than others, but still, all cultures have stolen, to some degree, cultures from somebody else. And even if you want to trace particular things back to indigenous tribes, who's to say which indigenous tribe got what from who or had what in the beginning, or which tribes they may have wiped out and taken something from? You see where this is going? You don't know. If you're being honest, if you want to be intellectually honest, you don't know what tribes had what. You don't know what civilizations originally had what, or who invented what and this other thing or whatnot. Therefore, essentially, without knowing, pretty much everything has been taken or assimilated from somebody else, since none of the original sources of pretty much anything can be verified. So the argument of, well, that's cultural appropriation, sure. So is everything else. So is probably everything you're wearing and the place that you live in, the architecture, the language you speak, and everything else. Yeah. So? And so with that being the case, all arguments about cultural appropriation essentially just become a type of moral grandstanding. They're not applied consistently, right? It's not like, arguments of cultural appropriation are not used like, you don't see people say like, oh, this white woman with dreadlocks, that's cultural appropriation. And you know what else really salts me? Asian people wearing business suits. It's not applied like that. It's always used, as a way to just demonize a particular group. And I think it's pretty straightforward which groups it's considered appropriate to demonize by using cultural appropriation, right? It's like a white woman wearing an indigenous headdress. That's cultural appropriation. A black woman straightening her hair and dyeing it blonde. She's the queen. Okay. You just have to laugh, right? I mean, okay. I mean, what is it? Is it cultural appropriation or isn't? You know, it's just, you just have to laugh. But ultimately, that's why it's nonsense, is because it's not based on a principle, because the actual principle is that everything is cultural appropriation. And that's not to say that cultural appropriation can't be distasteful or stupid. There's an NFL team called the Washington Redskins. Sure, that's distasteful and stupid. So, but in the end, is it something that is worth spending so much time on? I don't think it is. Just don't support them. Don't give them any of your money or your time. And that's about the maximum punishment that you can afford. I mean, other than, you're obviously, anybody's welcome to say anything they want, but, and that kind of ties into what my second point about cultural appropriation is, that it's just not a priority. There are so many tangible problems in the world that we are faced with: economic issues, environment issues, the suffering and poverty caused by central banking, authoritarianism, the unsustainability of the welfare state, debt everywhere, becoming, what are we, the poorest generation in 3 generations of Americans, or projected to be the first generation of Americans to do financially worse than our parents. I mean, there are, and I'm not just saying like, oh, I'm going to miss having a comfortable lifestyle. I'm talking about there are a lot of people working really hard to barely skirt poverty. And there are a whole bunch of people who are out in the streets. Look at the numbers of veteran suicides. There are a lot of tangible problems. And if you walk down the street and you see a homeless person, and that does not get you at least or more unhappy or upset than hearing about an NFL football team called the Washington Redskins, your priorities are out of whack. If, we only have a finite amount of energy and a finite amount of resources and a finite amount of things to devote our time to, and if we're devoting too much time to the name of an NFL football team and not to the homeless person who needs something to eat outside of, on the street outside of your house, that is a whack set of priorities. You got to get your head straight, because those things are just not the same. People outside your house going hungry is not the same as disrespecting another culture. It's just not the same. And so all of this virtue signaling and moral grandstanding and all this type of thing, if you really want to prove that you're a good person in the world, if you want to do something, get out there and feed somebody. Get out there and do something for somebody. Do something for yourself. Make yourself a better person. Do something in your community. By all means, you have a couple minutes, you don't like it, you want to say something, whatever, that's fine. I'm definitely not telling anybody they shouldn't express their opinion. However, when these things become like the obsession of your opinion, when, cultural appropriation, disrespect, these types of things becomes an obsession with virtue signaling and moral grandstanding, it skews people's perceptions away from the tangible reality in front of their face. And so, to conclude, don't sweat the cultural appropriation, because it's all stolen. And if you have something to add to that, you got a different opinion, you got a different perspective, feel free to put it in the comments. In fact, I think I'm going to need to make a follow-up to this video, already thinking about it, because I can anticipate some future comments. So I feel a part 2 coming on. In the meantime, work on yourself, do some good in your community, whoop some ass.